Boxing Truth here. It's Anthony Joshua fight week as he prepares to make the first defense of his IBF strap, as this could be the first of many for Joshua, as that's what Eddie Hearn is anticipating, as he anticipates Joshua to be the next dominant heavyweight for the next 10 years. And he's certainly got the platform, the fan base, and also the knockout power to perhaps deliver on that promise from Eddie Hearn. Now, for the first defense of his IBF strap for Joshua, he's going to be fighting a guy in Dominic Brazil, pretty much a similar professional experience. They've pretty much had the same amount of fights, same amount of experience. Brazil's an Olympian, former football player, took up the sport relatively late, and he's pretty much coming in to make Anthony Joshua look good. In order for Joshua to get another explosive knockout performance, to keep the boxing world buzzing about him, and to further create anticipation of a very lucrative showdown in the future against Tyson Fury. Now, of course, the criticism is out there for Anthony Joshua. He's being regarded by people in boxing, especially by Tyson Fury himself, as a champion in training wheels, a paper champion, fighting bums, basketball players, guys who are not serious fighters, guys that are pretty much going to come to lay down for Anthony Joshua, considering the paydays that they're going to get in fighting him. They're going to come there to the UK, take a couple of punches, lay down, make a few quid, and have happy days in the future after that payday. But Anthony Joshua, there's been a lot of pressure put on him. He hasn't gotten the development compared to other heavyweights since the limelight wasn't on those guys in the beginning of their careers. Ever since Anthony Joshua turned professional, the spotlight's been on him. He's been hailed as the future of the division. So he hasn't been able to get the time or the development that perhaps he should have gotten. But it's now that he's a champion, he's got to fight certain opponents. He has to fight guys that the public would deem as worthy challengers since he's a champion. And for the first defense, he's fighting a guy he's big, he's strong, he's a good point. He's got some power in Brazil, but he's not the fastest heavyweight, not the most athletic heavyweight. He's defensively very flawed, and he can create a fight with Joshua that would be action-packed for however long it lasts, but most likely Dominic Brazil is going to get chinned and flattened in what should be a 17th straight knockout win for Anthony Joshua. Now, of course, this is boxing. You still have to fight the fights. There have been upsets this year, and it always happens when you at least expect it. But it's very unlikely it's going to happen this Saturday, as Joshua is just much more explosive, the much more better athlete of the two, much faster, brings a lot more to the table athletically. He's a much more dynamic puncher, combination puncher, shows everything very textbook, and his power is real in the division. He's pretty much still a prospect as a world champion. Only 16 fights. He's knocked out every one of his opponents in impressive fashion. This is the third straight undefeated opponent he's fighting, but he's fighting untested guys who are not world beaters, guys who are undefeated, but they haven't really beaten anybody yet. Now, Dominic Brazil, he's coming off a tough win against Amir Mansour, and if you go by each other's resumes, who's fought better opposition? Who's fought the toughest opponent? Now, Anthony Joshua said that Dylan White was going to be light work for him, and ended up being his toughest fight. He had to go more than 2 rounds, which is not really the case for him throughout his professional career. He had to go 7 rounds in the fight. He got tested. His gas tank got tested, and he also got rocked in the fight. But he was able to overcome adversity, able to come back and score a devastating knockout win to pretty much prove that his power is real, that he could knock you out even later in fights after getting rocked. So that was a good win for Joshua, but it also raised some questions about him, especially about his chin. Is that going to be the norm? Is he going to get hurt as he starts fighting more elite punchers in the division? So I expect Joshua to get a good knockout win this Saturday against Dominic Breazeale. Breazeale maybe will have some moments. Maybe he could have a better moment. Maybe a moment compared to a Charles Martin who had no moments. But most likely he'll get knocked out. And Anthony Joshua can move on to bigger and better things. And that's the plan for Eddie Hearn, to get Anthony Joshua into positions for big, lucrative fights in the future. All Anthony Joshua has to do is keep winning. All Eddie Hearn has to keep doing is providing good style matchups to the British public for Anthony Joshua. Put him in with guys that can make him look good, and so he can keep having these lights out performances that he's been having in his career. But now that he's a champion, he's got to fight a little better quality of opposition. He can't just fight anybody. He has to fight guys within the top 15 of the IBF rankings. So Eddie Hearn's got to be feeling good. He's got Joshua a network deal with a U.S. broadcaster, one of the very few UK fighters to do that, to get a network deal from a U.S. broadcaster. He's got the platform to showcase Anthony Joshua, and he's looking for that Tyson Fury fight in the future, but he's going to look to marinate it. He's going to look to get Joshua the most ready as possible for a fight against Tyson Fury in the future. And he's looking to perhaps make that fight happen in the spring of next year at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 fans, and what would be a very, very big fight, very lucrative fight. But Eddie Hearn's going to play it smart. I mean, he's not going to throw Joshua right in there with Fury coming off a win over a couple of prospects or untested guys. He's going to develop Joshua a little more to make sure that he's ready as possible. And Eddie Hearn, he's got to be feeling good. This is the first fighter he's ever signed out of the amateurs, developed him, got him the learning, development fights, get him to a position to a world title, and for Joshua to deliver in winning his first world title. It's the first time Eddie Hearn has done that, to develop a fighter and lead him to a world title. And that's got to be a good feeling for a promoter, to develop your first champion. That's his first champion, Anthony Joshua. And now he's got to develop him into a major superstar. Get him to cross over and perhaps fighting in the United States one day on pay-per-view. Lennox Lewis type of level. And that's what Eddie Hearn is going to try to do. But he's going to be smart about it. He knows Joshua's not ready for Tyson Fury right now, even though he says Fury's tailor-made for him. But right now, Joshua's just simply not ready. He needs more fights. He needs to fight better quality opponents, more worthy challengers, more worthy contenders. And after this fight with Dominic Breazeale, perhaps that fight could be against Joseph Parker, an undefeated guy who's pretty much developing just similar to Joshua, who's coming off a tough fight against Carlos Takam, a type of fight that can really, truly make a prospect even a better fighter. Just the way he was tested in that fight against Takam, and he had to overcome a lot of adversity. His gas tank got tested. It can only make you a better fighter when you're in that type of fight like that. So that could be next for Joshua. A mandatory defense against Joseph Parker. As Joshua is aware of Parker, he's followed his career, and he feels that fight is going to happen. And I think it's going to happen before a Tyson Fury fight. It's a good fight. It's definitely, I would say, the most real fight of Joshua's career if you were to fight Parker next after a Dominic Breazeale. But I'm not too sure when that mandatory defense is due. I've heard conflicting reports that, later in the year they have to negotiate it, or early next year. When Martin made his first defense against Joshua, he was given a year he was given a year until he had to make his next mandatory defense. So I don't know if the same applies to Anthony Joshua now that he has the strap and will be making his first voluntary defense against Dominic Breazeale. So Joseph Parker maybe next after that, or maybe another voluntary. Perhaps there were some names discussed. like a Bryant Jennings, maybe a Dylan White rematch, as Eddie Hearn feels he could pull that off again, make a little money, maybe get the same type of pay-per-view numbers. But the ultimate goal, obviously, is a unification with Fury, a domestic showdown in the UK that could generate huge numbers, million pay-per-view buys in the UK, 80,000 at Wembley for next spring. And it's a type of fight that's just too big for it not to happen. But Eddie Hearn's going to make sure that Joshua is as ready as possible before he takes that fight. And Tyson Fury, he's just waiting. He still has to fight Klitschko, but if he beats him again, he's looking for the biggest money fights out there. And then he trashes Anthony Joshua, calls him a paper champion. He's fighting a bunch of bums, basketball players, guys that play other sports, not serious fighters. And that if they were to fight, that he's just gonna fight them. That he doesn't want their belts. He doesn't want the other champions in the heavyweight division's belts. He'll let a Deontay Wilder and the Tyson Fury fight. And the Anthony Joshua fight him, but he's not interested in their belts. He just simply wants the paydays. He wants the fights. And he wants those names on his resume. And the fight with Joshua Fury, if it's going to happen, it won't happen until next year. And who knows what's going to happen with Fury after Klitschko. Because he's looking for big fights. He's not looking for tune-ups or stay busy fights. He wants the biggest fights out there. So it looks like maybe Wilder is going to be the guy to fight Fury next if he takes care of Klitschko in the rematch. Because it's definitely not going to be Joshua. As they're going to look to take more fights in between, get more developed, and then pull a trigger on a Tyson Fury fight in the spring of next year in front of 80,000 at Wembley. What would be a big, massive fight for the UK, for the heavyweight division, and for the sport of boxing. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.